the intent is not to be objective, because that's my job.
Okay.
That's my job. My job is to be objective. And if somebody's looking for a specific kind of fragrance, I have to be able to show them certain things. They're like, I've been using Nag Champa for years, and and I really, it's like, enough already, I just need something different. Or, in the case of Nag Champa, particularly Srinivas Sugandhalaya, the blue box Nag Champa, particularly in that case, it has changed so much. If you had Nag Champa from, say, even as recently as the early 90s, and you have Nag Champa now, certainly from the mid to late 80s, and you compare it to what you get now, they are not even similar.
Wow.
They're not even similar. It's like, it's Welch's grape juice and Kool-Aid, and grape Kool-Aid. They're like completely different creatures.
Yeah.
They sort of vaguely, in some way, maybe there's some resemblance. But, if you held your nose, they're similar. They're the same.
Is one stronger?
You know what? Originally, the fragrance, it was much brighter, much more floral. And we'll get into kind of one of the big differences when we start to classify all of these things. It's about a very key ingredient, one particular key ingredient. It really defines an entire subclass of incenses. But you don't have to despair, because there are substitutes. In fact, there are things that smell more like Nag Champa now than Nag Champa does.
Oh,
okay.
Good to know.
So anyway, so somebody will say, I've been using Nag Champa, blah, 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 I need something, anything. And I'm like, okay. So now you have to kind of backwards engineer and say, okay, have you used anything else? Like, no, I've been using Nag Champa since 1967 or whatever. And I'm like, most people have not noticed the change, because it's very, very subtle. And it's like little increments. But it's radically different. So anyway, I will show them a fragrance that if you like Nag Champa, you'll probably like this. And their response is, this is kind of nice, but not quite, what I was looking for. And I'm like, okay, so there's something about it that's not quite working for you. What is it? Is it too sweet? Is it too strong? Is it not strong enough? Do you want something with more spice? And I try to help people pinpoint what it is, so I can then give them something down the next fragrance I give them. I hope that it better suits them. So that is kind of like wine tasting. And there are times when I need to recommend fragrances or show people fragrances that objectively, are really great fragrances, but I just don't like them. Just as anybody who is a wine taster, there's certain kinds of wines that they don't like. But they have to be objective and say that this is a good one. This is a really good one. I don't like it. I can tell, it's a good one, because the more I dislike it, probably the better it is. Because it more is like that class of wines that I don't like. There's certain characteristics about it that I don't like. Like, I could find you the best cilantro, the best, brightest, most flavorful cilantro, because the more I don't like it, the better it probably is. But I can tell you what's good, that this is good. So that's part of my job, is having to be objective and show people fragrances that they're really good fragrances. I just don't like them. So, where does it begin? It begins probably thousands and thousands, probably before we were even writing, probably pre-cuneiform, when we were just noticed that certain things, when we put them in the fire, had really interesting fragrances, really nice fragrances. And these kinds of plants were identified, and we figured out what parts of these plants in particular were really, really good. And so they're incorporated in cooking as well, like cinnamon and things like that. Who knows how long we've been using this stuff? Cloves, cinnamon, saffron, all these kinds of things. But probably as far as the Western world, the daddy is frankincense. I still, we've been using this stuff. I mean, it's in the Bible, so it's at least as old as the Bible.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. No, that's cool. So it's in the Torah. As old as the Torah is, what's something like 6-something thousand years old? Jim might know even more than I do. 6-something thousand years old, the Torah? 6,000 something.
Almost 8,000.
Okay. So we've been using this stuff for at least that long, and we don't really know how much longer. It, much like spices and other things, like silk, there's the frankincense road. I mean, it had impact globally. I mean, the Romans were just absolutely enraptured with this stuff. So this is kind of where it begins. It's from this sort of scrubby-looking, shrubby plant. That, you know what? If you looked at it, it would be really much of a disappointment. When you consider the significance, of such a thing. It's a sacrament. Most believe that the best in the world, and they're probably right, if you want to try and be objective, about something that is subjective, from the Arab Emirate of Oman. From Oman, there's a very, very small region. In fact, now they're having trouble because war is affecting it. They produce Omani frankincense. It's a very specific species of tree and everything. And then they classify it into different grades. The best, what they call Hojari Select, they call it silver. That's kind of the term for it, silver. So that shows you its impact. It's like Naim and other grades. There's hundreds of grades, of frankincense. The stuff I'm getting, I might have a source for Omani frankincense. It's possible. I'm working on it, because getting stuff from Arab Emirates is not easy. What happens often is, particularly when there's a ruling class, of a nation, that a particular resource is so important to their economy, they tend to be kind of controlling. You can understand. So this is kind of where it begins. So I got a charcoal lit. Now, these are things you need a heat source for. Charcoal being one of the traditional, I suppose there's probably ways you can rig up something on a stove or whatever, but I don't know if I'd recommend it. Gives off a lot of smoke in a big hurry. One of the things I will do is if I save the ashes, and I'll light a charcoal, and once it's really, really lit, I'll kind of bury it in ashes, and I'll put some of these frankincense pebbles. They call them tears. It's sort of the term for them. They call them tears because some of them kind of look like